I would wonder, how can so many people read the same book and still have different meanings come out of it? Some would say it was true. Some would say it's not true. And that the Bible contradicted itself. That it was too difficult to understand and it'll never be understood. And they would even mystify the Bible. I would hear those that are not Christians, and unfortunately also I heard some Christians say that the way you read the Bible is like this. Did you ever hear that? Yeah, they would mystify it. Or, well, I don't know if, I know in the Spanish people, a lot of Spanish people did this. They would open the Bible in the house and have a certain book or chapter, and that would bless the house or bring good luck or something. Did you ever hear that? See, they heard it. You heard it too? Yeah. So you hear all these things. Remember what you used to think of the Bible. But what does the Bible say? Slide. It says, do your best to present yourselves to God as one approved, a workman who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. This is not handling the right way. And I like I said, I've heard some Christians say that's the way they read it every morning. And Judas betrayed Jesus. No, that can't be right. Do the same. Wait. What are you waiting for? See, you can come up with all kinds of things. And it's no way to be led by the Lord. Slide. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. A lot of people say, come on, you're throwing your life away in that book. It's just a book written by man. Well, they're partly true. It is written by man. Somebody said, a few people sat down and, actually did this. But it was through the Holy Spirit. So you can say it's written by man, but you can also say it's written by God. They're both right. Slide. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. You're not going to get anywhere with that kind of nonsense. This is a lamp. We live in a dark world, and this guides us in this world. It's like a lamp. And so we need to understand this lamp, this book. And we need oil so that we can have more light. Now, oil has to do with understanding. Oil has to do with wisdom. It's the Holy Spirit, but he's working through wisdom, and light has to do with understanding. So we need to understand this to guide ourselves in this world. Oh, Jesus guides us. Slide. Was there? Yeah, you go. The unfolding of thy words gives light. It imparts understanding to the simple. When I first got saved, or before I got saved, I had no idea what this book was about. I had a certain respect for it because I was brought up Catholic. I had a kind of religious respect for it, but I knew nothing about it. I'd hear people say that's not true, it's just written by man. I couldn't go either way. I couldn't defend it because I didn't know. So it was just an opinion. But once I got to understand the Bible, when I first understood something deep in the Bible, I was like, wow, I can't believe, why didn't I understand that before? Because I wasn't saved. I didn't have God's Spirit. I just was blind. I was in darkness. But we need this, especially in these dark times. It's getting darker and darker. We need to understand this book. It guides us. Now, like I said, there are people who say, oh, it contradicts itself. It's not true. They're always attacking it. Now, I want to give you an example. Look at 1 Samuel. Oh, slide. 1 Samuel 31, 1 through 4. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons. And the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle pressed hard upon Saul, and the archers found him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and make sport of me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he feared greatly. Therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. So according to this, Saul killed himself. He committed suicide. Okay? Now, slide. Now, 2 Samuel chapter 1, 5 through 10. There's this young man, and he comes up to David and tells him, "Hey, Saul is dead, and so is his sons." So then David says to the young man, I'll pick it up here in verse 5. David says to the young man who told him, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" And the young man who told him said, "By chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning upon his spear. And lo, the chariots and the horsemen were close upon him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me. And I answered, 'Here I am.' And he said to me, 'Who are you?' I answered him, 'I am an Amalekite.' And he said to me, 'Stand beside me and slay me, for anguish has seized me, and yet my life still lingers.' So I stood beside him and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took the crown which was on his head and the armlet which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord." Is there a problem here?
Yeah.
What's the problem? Yeah.
He said that he slew him, but then Saul said he fell on his own spear.
Yeah. It's a contradiction. So, you had something to say?
He's also the Lord's anointed.
He's what?
Saul was the Lord's anointed.
Yes, that's right. That's very important. So, one says he killed himself. This one says this young man killed him. Or the man says, the young man says he killed him. So how do we come to understand this then? Are they right? Is this a contradiction? You know that the Bible can't contradict itself. If you find a contradiction, there's a big problem. So how do you answer this? Anybody got any ideas? Yeah?
I'd say both are true. Saul did take a sword to himself, but it didn't put him to death. It put him in anguish because he was dying.
So he was unsuccessful in his suicide, and the other guy kind of finished him off?
Yes, he finished him off.
Well, it's not what it says. It says he took his own life. Well, what actually happened is that the young man lied. He didn't do it. See, in the first one, who's speaking in the first one? In 1 Samuel? The author. The author is saying what happened. Here, the author's speaking, but he's speaking, telling what the young man said. So the young man was lying. He thought he'd be in good with David, you know? But it turned out that it didn't turn out that way. Dave ended up killing him. So how dare, like what you said, he was the anointed. How dare you do that? How can you kill him? So he ended up getting killed.
How do we know he was lying?
Well, I can't tell you more than what I just said because you have to look. One is Samuel speaking in the first one. Samuel is saying what happened. In the second one, Samuel's not saying what happened. He's saying what the young man said happened. So who are you going to believe? The prophet Samuel? Or you're going to believe the young man that said that? So one had to be wrong. It couldn't both be right. So I would trust Samuel. All right. So see, there's seemingly contradictions. And people attack the Bible that way. When there is an answer. But you have to dig a little deeper to find out. Slide. Here's another one. In Deuteronomy 15:4 it says, "But there will be no poor among you, for the Lord will bless you in the land which the Lord your God gives you for an inheritance to possess." So there won't be no poor. You go into this land, no poor. Slide. Now Deuteronomy 15:7, and then I'm going to jump to 11. "If there is among you a poor man," oh, wait a minute. What do you mean if there's not supposed to be no poor man. What do you mean if there's a poor man? If there is a poor man, if there is among you a poor man, one of your brethren, in any of your towns within your land, which the Lord your God gives you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother. Wait, there's not supposed to be any poor in the land. And then 11 says, "For the poor will never cease." In other words, there'll always be poor. "For the poor will never cease out of the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in the land." Again, contradiction. God said there won't be no poor in the land that you're going to inherit. But then here it says, there'll always be poor. How do you answer this? Contradiction? Slide. See, you have to read verse 5. "If only you will obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandment which I command you this day." So see, verse 4 said there won't be any poor in the land. But then verse 5 says, if. See, it's conditional. If you only will obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do this commandment which I command you this day. So there wouldn't be any if they'd listen, if they would, yes?
I would say that's how false teachers deceive people. What they do is they cherry pick a verse and they construct, it's called proof texting. But they take a verse and they pull it out of context and they do a teaching on it and they impose their view on it. And that's how people get fooled. That's why it says the sum of thy word is truth. You got to look at the whole Bible, the whole statement.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah.
See, there's the ideal, the way it should be. Hey, if there won't be no poor, that's the way it should be. That's the ideal. And there's the actual, the way it ends up being. They didn't listen. They didn't follow.
Did you ever ask yourself, why is it that there will always be poor?
Why?
Sometimes questions have answers. If you were to ask why is it that they will remain poor, not because they'll be poor just because they're going to be poor. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
I'm not sure, really. But hold that question for now, okay? When I'm done, then we'll ask questions, right? Let me get through this. So ideally, there would be no poor if you listened to God, if they would have listened. But they didn't, so the result was that there would be poor. So you see, there are seemingly contradictions. See, let me say this. I have a brother, an older brother, who lives in Georgia. Before he got saved, he told me, "Oh, come on, Jess. Why can't the Bible just say what it says? Why does it have to be so difficult? Why does it have to go around and be so hard to understand? Why can't God just, boom, tell you what he wants to tell you?" And I told him, look, when you get to know someone, when you meet someone, do you tell them your deepest secrets about yourself? Do you tell them things that are very personal? No, you don't go around talking to people about your really deep personal issues. But as you get a relationship going, you get to know the person, and you trust them, then maybe you'll start opening up. And the more you know them, the more you trust them, the more you start opening up. And it's the same with God. You have to have a relationship with him. Look at the world. Look at the little bit that they know about God. What do they do with it? They make jokes about it, filthy jokes, laugh. Imagine if God opened himself up, what they would do with that? No. So my brother kind of understood. He was still frustrated. He got saved years later, but he was still frustrated because of that. But yeah, there's a reason why God does things the way he does. So why these seemingly contradictions? Why so difficult? There's reasons for that. Let me give you one more. John 18, slide. Okay, this is John 18, 19, and 20. The high priest, this is at Jesus' trial. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple where all Jews come together. I have said nothing secretly. Okay? Nothing secretly. I'm an open book. Spoken openly to the world, nothing secret. Slide. Now this says, he did not speak to them without a parable, but privately to his own disciples he explained everything. Whoa, did Jesus lie at his trial? He said he spoke openly, nothing in secret. And here it says, but privately to his own disciples he explained everything. How do you explain this? Yeah.
I would say that when Jesus was speaking parables, the Pharisees didn't understand.
It's true. They didn't understand. Come here. I'll explain it to you. Is that being open?
Those texts say that he spoke in public. So he did not speak to them without parables. So he's still speaking to them. However, he explained it to his disciples.
Privately explained it. I don't know. What do you guys think? Technicality.
Here we go.
Is that a good enough answer? Yeah, well, he spoke openly, but he said it in parables. But hey, come here. Don't tell nobody. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think where he said that he spoke to the parables because most of them kind of like didn't understand.
Yeah.
This is where going to reject his teaching anyway. So he spoke to them in parables because they already had a heart of heart. They were like, okay, yeah, it's kind of like where he spoke to them in parables, and he said he left them to their devices and look, you figure it out what I said to you.
Key word. And also key word, disciple.
Okay, disciple.
Those who are already following him and believe in him, go with him wherever he goes. So therefore, and it's like he said, parable because they're already hardened. He knows already. Like
You started something, but then now you're going back. You're getting close, though.
So
Getting closer.
I think he's quoting from Isaiah, and I think the condition was, if you turn to me, I will heal you, at the end of that parable. So basically, he spoke privately, he spoke openly, but some people kept moving on or passing on. But the condition in Isaiah was, if you turn to me, I will heal you, and there was more to it if they received it correctly.
Well, you're getting really close. I mean, that's maybe even. All right, I'll tell you what. Slide. And when he was alone, those who were about him with the 12 asked him concerning the parable. See, they asked. The other ones just walked away. And then now he's alone. He's private with the other. He can't help that. He's alone. And they said, hey, Jesus, what was that all about? So privately to his own disciples, he explained everything. So you're kind of there. So they asked. That's the answer. They asked. The other ones didn't even ask. They just said, oh, man, forget this. It's too hard for me. Yeah.
I was going to say, basically, you got to look in the context, like read like the full thing.
Yes, like what Dave was saying. That's right.
Instead of like
Very good. So, see, we have these seemingly contradictions, lies, hard teachings, all these things. But those that attack the Bible, they salivate at stuff like this. They look for contradictions in the Bible, and they love that. But why the opportunity to do that? Why does the Bible, why did Jesus do it that way? Give the opportunity to do that. Are there somehow some kind of benefit to this? Having seemingly contradictions in the Bible? How does that work? How does that work for the Bible? Or does it? Why so hard? Why so difficult? That's what my brother was trying to... Why? You get so frustrated. It was hard to talk to him when he was like that. Are there any benefits to seemingly contradictions in the Bible? sometimes people explain things differently, right? You can have different views of the same thing. Like in a police investigation, what do? They check out the suspects, what's their alibis, what are the eyewitnesses, they listen to, they separate them. And sometimes they might even sound like they're contradicting each other, but sometimes it's just that one might have left out a detail with someone else remembered a detail and added to it. So that shows that that there's no collusion. They didn't see if let's say Dave commits some crime, right? And Paris was with him. And the police come to them and say, wait, let's hear what happened. And they say exactly the same, word for word, the same story. Where they were, what they were doing. What do you think the police would think if they had the exact same things to say, same words? What would the police think? Yeah, they got together. They got together and say, hey, look, if this happens, this is what I'm going to say. See, that shows collusion. But sometimes things, they might sound different. They might sound even contradictory sometimes. But then when you get the whole story and put it all together, you find, okay, there's no sign of collusion. They said different things, might have sounded like a contradiction. Paris had more details than Dave. So it's good. So that's one thing about the Bible. Sometimes you have to put things together. It's not always, exactly the same. It might sound like a contradiction, but you just got to dig a little deeper to find out what it's all about. Another benefit is that it sharpens your attention to detail. Okay? You dig deeper. You dig deeper into the word seeking answers. So it sharpens you. You get into it more. You study more to get to the truth. You get sharper. So that's good. I mean, I'll tell you a personal experience in a second, but it also tests you. It tests your commitment to Christ. See, some people would use that as an excuse and walk away. Oh, contradiction. I'm free to do what I want. Or you can show your commitment. Exercise your faith. But like I said, on the other hand, if you're looking for a way out, you can use it as an excuse. Yeah. You can use it as an excuse.
You're looking for a way out.
Looking for a way out.
Give you the rope.
Yes.
He'll give you the rope.
So do you want to seek an answer, or do you want to use it as a way out? So, slide. It's Mark 4:12. Okay, there you go. So that they may indeed see but not perceive, and may indeed hear but not understand, lest they should turn again and be forgiven. See, there are those who, they're just hard-hearted. Like it says there, they may see but not perceive. There are those who are hard-hearted and they don't really want to know. So any small obstruction will be a way out. They're not really trying. They see, won't perceive. They don't really try. So they're looking at it, but they're not getting it. So they walk away and they don't get forgiven. And I know a lot of you must have experienced that when you're witnessing. People, they just don't want to really hear it. They'll come up with lame excuses. They'll try to attack you. They just won't get it. Slide. They just walk away. In John 6:66, well, see, a little background. Jesus is speaking here about the bread that comes from heaven. And he says he's the bread from heaven. And that if you eat that bread, you'll have eternal life. And he says that the flesh is the bread, his flesh. So you have to eat his flesh. So people, oh, what? They didn't understand. It was too hard. So what do? After this, many of his disciples drew back and no longer went about with him. See, there's contradictions. There's difficult teachings. There's different views that people seem like to be contradicting one another about the Bible, and they get, they just walk away. They don't try to find out the answer. And notice here, I never really thought about this till when I was doing the study, but it says, after this, many of his disciples. These are disciples. This is not just people he's talking. These are his disciples. Disciples of follower. Many of his disciples drew back and no longer. So there was a point where they were following. They were with him. No longer went about with him. So it's not just the unsaved. Even some saved that are just kind of like wishy-washy. They'll turn away. Again, maybe looking for a way out, looking for an excuse. So you can use what seems to be a contradiction as an excuse to walk away, or even hard sayings difficult to understand. Or you can try to sharpen yourself and try to figure this out. See, it all depends where you're at. These seemingly contradictions can work for you or they can work against you. Now, I want to give you a personal experience I had, and this goes way back. I was fairly a new Christian. I knew I had grown some, but then this study kind of confused me a little bit. It's slide. I had a hard time accepting this. Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. Hey, Jesus, check out this temple, how beautiful it is. But he answered them, you see all these? Do you not? Truly, I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. Now, at first, I had no problem. But then when I really started thinking about it, I said, wait a minute. Back then, they didn't have bombs. I mean, not one stone upon another. They didn't have bombs. Even a bomb might not do that. There might still be a couple stuck together. But they didn't have bombs back then. See, in 70 AD, the Romans destroyed the temple. And it says that, so this came true. It was destroyed. But it says here that there wouldn't be not even one stone upon another. Well, what did they have back then? They had arrows, they had spears, they had that thing, that catapult thing. That ain't going to do that, to destroy this temple to the point where there wouldn't even be one stone upon another. So I started having a hard time figuring this out or accepting this. And I was a young Christian then, and I had met Brother Dave. Dave taught this one time. And he taught it more than one time, I think. I never said to him, hey, Dave, how can that be? Because I kept it to myself. Everybody accepted it. I heard that it was in history, that it was recorded in history. And I believed the Bible, and there it is, it's in the Bible. So I was kind of trying to accept it, but there was always this nagging feeling. How could it be? The only way I can imagine that would happen is if the Romans went around tearing them apart. And I said, but I can't see them wasting their time doing that. So I would ask other pastors, I would ask Bible teachers about it, and they would always give me the answer of, oh, the Romans were so ruthless, they wanted to demoralize the Jews, so they tore it all apart. I still couldn't. I don't think that just didn't make sense to me. I don't think they'd waste their time doing that. So remember, back then there wasn't Google. I couldn't just Google it. So what kept me going was my faith. I had to accept it, but there was always this nagging feeling. Then one day, I was reading a book about the temple. I wanted to learn more about the temple, and I was reading this book, and I found the answer. Actually, I stumbled upon the answer, because I wasn't looking for the answer. I just happened to be reading the book on the temple, and they mentioned this. I says, wow. And when I read it, I could see clearly, yes, now I can see how that can happen. And what a relief that was. I didn't have that nagging feeling, and I saw it clearly, yes. What happened, in case you don't know, the temple was beautiful. That's why the disciples said, oh, Jesus, check this out. Look how beautiful that building. And it was a beautiful building, and in the building there was a lot of precious things. It was gold and silver, you know, furnitures and stuff. Also, I read in the book that there were walls that were lined with gold inside. Inside there were walls that were lined with gold. So when the Romans attacked the Jews and destroyed the temple, there was a point where the temple caught fire. And the fire was so strong, it was so strong that some of that gold was starting to melt on the wall and started seeping in between the cracks of the stones. I said, yes! What they were doing later on was, they were tearing them apart looking for gold. They were trying to get the gold out. And I said, now I can see it. You can see how clearly you can say, yes, there wouldn't be one stone upon another. Jesus was right. They were seeking the gold. They were tearing them apart. So again, you got to dig in. You got to dig in there. Now, like I said, I really stumbled upon it, but there was always that nagging feeling. But what a relief.
And we've seen all the stones torn apart too on the floor when we went to Israel.
Wow.
Pictures of all the stones.
That is so
There's
cool.
stone left there.
Wow. That's really something.
It's still laying in the same place where they threw them.
Did you check the gold? See if any gold was there. All right. So, so you do have to dig deeper. And when you do, it sharpens you up. It was a big relief for me. But there are seemingly contradictions and hard sayings that are hard to understand, different views, people contradicting each other on what this means. And if you're really looking for an excuse to get out, there you go. God will give it to you. He'll let you, if that's what you want, He'll give it to you. He'll give you what you want. There are some Christians that have to have miracles. You have to have miracles to believe. Well, then, if that's what you want, there's Benny Hinn. God will give it to you. There's Benny Hinn if you want him. Or the sweet, soft Christian, everything's good. Well, there, you got Joel Osteen right there for you, if that's what you want. So God will let you have what you want if that's what you want. But it all depends on where you're at. If you're really seeking the truth, it'll sharpen you up getting through these seemingly contradictions. So, there are benefits to it. God knows what He's doing. So there could be benefits to these seemingly contradictions or hard things to understand. It can sharpen your attention to detail. You dig deeper. It can show your commitment. It gives you the opportunity to exercise your faith. Or it can work against you where you can use it as an excuse to walk away. If you really want a way out, God will let you have it. But what does God desire? Slide. It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings is to search things out. See, that's what God wants. He wants you to search His Word. He wants you to search it out. If you're a dad or if you're a parent, you get pleasure out of your child wanting to know more about you. You have that relationship, that closeness, and you see his desire. It's like God. He wants us to search things out. He wants us to come to know Him, seek Him out. Now, slide. This is something that might have happened to you when you witness. Who by a word make a man out to be an offender, and lay a snare for him who reproves in the gate, and with an empty plea turn aside him who is in the right. Yeah, it's like sometimes when you're witnessing, and you got the person cornered. I mean, you've got him where he knows he has to get saved. He knows it's the right thing to do, but he's fighting it. There's this battle going on in his head. Should I? Shouldn't I? I know it's the right thing, but. There's nothing after the but. And they're going through this battle. So sometimes they'll look for you to attack you. The smallest thing that maybe that'll be his way out, attack you. Who by a word, in other words, the smallest thing, just one word, anything, make a man out to be an offender. You're the one that's in the wrong. He knows, he's cornered. He knows so he tries to attack you somehow. and he lay a snare for him who reproves in the gate, person witnessing, and with an empty plea, turn aside him who's in the right. With an empty plea, they'll look for something wrong. Now, this is an example. This is what happened to me one time. I was witnessing to this guy, and it was to the point where he knew he had to get saved. You've been there. You've been when you're witnessing, and they know. You know that they have to get saved. And you know they're going through this battle in their head. And we try to get them through it. And he was like looking for a way out, but he couldn't. Then, see, I had my Bible, and I wanted to show him something else. And this card fell out. Now, this was a card. I needed one time to write something. And so I found this card, and I used to write on it different verses for I might need them for witnessing or to show people. But on the other side of the card, it said, Shadows Disco. And so when the card came out of the Bible, it flipped around and landed, and it said, Shadows Disco. And he saw that, he goes, ah! Oh, Jess. Oh. And he left. That was his word. That was the small thing. So who by a word make a man out to be an offender? I was the offender now. And lay a snare for him who reproves in the gate. I'm reproving him. I'm witnessing to him. And with an empty plea, he knew that was not nothing, but it was his way out. With an empty plea, turn aside him who is in the right. So, I don't know if, did that happen to anybody? They find something, even though it's not justified, but it's their escape. It's their excuse. So that was it. That was by a word. Now, the last thing. It's another unexpected benefit to these seemingly contradictions. It's how those who set out to disprove the Bible and see contradictions, and in so doing, they come to a deeper understanding of the Bible, and they not only become believers, they also become defenders of the Word. An example is Josh McDowell. He wrote the book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. He set out to look for fault in the Bible, and look what happened. He ended up becoming a believer and a defender. So, yeah, there are benefits to these seemingly contradictions, hard sayings. It can work for you, it can work against you, depends where you're at. That's it. Now, if there's any questions or comments? Yes.